Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat, and today we're going over the best ramp for EDH on a budget. Let's jump right into it. So all of these cards are less than $1 and there's a ton of options. Starting with Arboreal Grazer. It's a 0/3 beast for 1 green mana with reach, which already is really nice, because if our opponent tries to hit us with a 1/1 flyer, we're able to block that, and our creature isn't going to die. But when it enters the battlefield, we can put a land from our hand onto the battlefield tapped, which the definition of ramp is putting lands into play or onto the battlefield. Doesn't specify whether it's from our hand or our library, but this card specifies our hand. So if you have a lot of lands in your hand, this is a great card for you to have, especially for 1 green mana, because we can be casting a creature, which could trigger another card like Beast Whisperer. We draw a card whenever we cast a creature spell, so we could end up drawing a card from 1 green mana and putting a land into play, which is super good. Next we're going to be talking about Diligent Farmhand, which again is another green mana. It's a 1/1 druid, and we can pay 1 and a green to sack it, and we can search our library for a basic land and put it into play tapped. Then we're going to shuffle our library, and when this is in the graveyard, which this is a very budget version of Wayfarer's Bauble, it just has to be in a green deck. And look, it's only 22 cents, which is a great budget option. Elvish Pioneer. When it enters the battlefield, we can put a basic land from our hand into play tap, which this does specify a basic land, so if you're playing a mono green deck, it's very likely you're going to have those basic lands in your hand. Krosan Wayfarer. For 1 green mana, we can sack it to put a land from our hand into play. This is really sweet, especially if we have a lot of grave interaction where we can keep bringing this back and sacrificing it. So for example, we could talk about Marin. This commander wants our creatures to die because we get experience counters when they do, or just having creatures in our graveyard, or when creatures die we get benefits from that as well. So for 24 cents, this is a really neat card. Sky Shroud Ranger. I really like this one. This might be my favorite in the list because we can continually tap this card to put a land from our hand into play or onto the battlefield, and we can play it only as a sorcery. We can get this for 48 cents, and this is as if we have an exploration. Yes, this is a creature, so it's very likely it could be removed, but you're telling me your opponent's going to remove this card? I don't think so. I'm sure that we have better threats than this one. And what's really nice is that this card doesn't specify a basic land, so this could be a command tower if we want it to be. This is just a sweet one to pick up. Veteran Explorer is another one of my favorites. For 1 green mana, we get a 1/1 Human Soldier Scout, which doesn't really matter in most decks, but when it dies, each player may search their library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield. What's really sweet is that it doesn't enter tapped, and if our opponents aren't playing as many basic lands as we are, we get the biggest benefit out of this card. Or in most games, we're going to ask our opponent, hey, can I swing at you with my 1/1? You're going to block it, we're going to help this creature die, and everybody gets 2 basics. Sounds great. So that's what this card is, and for 21 cents, this is a great budget ramp card. Cartographer's Hawk. I don't particularly like this one, but it is 32 cents, but let me explain why I don't like it. So for 1 and a white, already it has a great mana cost, but here's the problem. It has to deal combat damage to a player who controls more lands than you, which is very likely if we're playing in a mono white deck. We can return this to our hand, so it has to have haste or no summoning sickness when we do this. So if those conditions are met, we get to put a plains card into play tapped, which that is nice because it doesn't have to be a basic plains, so it could be a Hallowed Fountain or whatever has plains in the card's type text. So it's not a terrible card, it just stinks that we have to wait an additional turn for it to have haste or not summoning sickness for it to deal combat damage. But hey, it's ramp, so this is an option. Dawn Treader Elk is another good one. We can pay 1 and a green for a 2/2 elk, and we can sacrifice it while also paying a green to search for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. And for 23 cents, this is a great card, especially if you care about your creatures dying. This is going to be a perfect one for you. Firebrand Ranger. For 1 and a red, we have a 2/1 Human Soldier Ranger. We can pay a green and tap it to put a basic land from our hand onto the battlefield. Again, this is a really unique one, especially in the colors of red. Now it is red and green, so it has to be in at least a Gruul deck or a red and green deck. And again, if you care about your basic lands, this is a great one for you to have, or this is actually a great budget option for an Omnath deck. We love putting our lands onto the battlefield so we can trigger our landfall stuff, so this might be one for you to consider. Frontier Guide. Now, hear me out before you disregard this whole card. Look at the cost of it. It's 14 cents from Zendikar, and it costs 1 and a green to cast it for a 1/1 Elf Scout, so maybe if we're an Elf deck, this could be a good option, or if we care about landfall. And the reason why I say that is because for 3 and a green, we can tap it, we can search our library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So we get a repeatable effect of a rampant growth. Now it does cost twice as much, but if we really care about that consistency and always getting a basic land to the battlefield, this is a great option for you. Llanowar Scout. We can put a land from our hand onto the battlefield, and in order to do that, we have to tap this creature, which again is an Elf Scout, which can be helpful again in an Elf deck. And what's nice is that it doesn't specify a basic land, so again we can put in those command towers or whatever non-basic lands that we would have in our hand. Loam Dweller. I actually just found this card. For 1 and a green, we get a 2/2 Spirit, and whenever we play a Spirit or Arcane spell, we can put a land from our hand into play tapped. So if you are a Spirit or Arcane tribal deck, this is a great one for you to add, especially for 27 cents. Marasa Rootgrazer. For a green and a white, we get a pretty neat card. It's a 2/3 with Vigilance. We can tap it to put a basic land from our hand onto the battlefield, which is nice because it doesn't specify that it's tapped. We can also tap it to return a basic land we control to its owner's hand, so we can constantly get those landfall triggers if we need, and it's a 2/3 with Vigilance like I said, so this can be very useful when attacking our opponents. And look at the price, 8 cents, that is crazy good. Viridian Emissary. For 1 and a green, we get a 2/1 elf scout. When it dies, we get to search our library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, and it's great in a deck that wants your creatures to die. Avenging Druid. For 2 and a green, it's a human druid, 1/3. Whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. If you do, put that card onto the battlefield and put all other cards revealed this way into your grave. This is so good. Kind of like a hermit druid vibe going on. That land card is going to be put onto the battlefield, so it could hit non-basic lands, but all the other cards are going into our grave, so if you love your cards in your graveyard, this is one I really have to recommend. And look at the price, 17 cents. This is silly good. Now I did want to mention Averna the Chaos Bloom. This isn't supposed to be a ramp card, I guess, but if you cascade a lot, you can actually put the cards that are lands from the exiled cards from cascading onto the battlefield tapped. Well, you can put one land from among them onto the battlefield tapped, but still this is really good because when it comes to cascading, it's very likely you're going to run into maybe 10 to 15 cards of not being able to cascade until you hit the one card that you can, and you're going to come across a lot of lands in that case, so I really recommend this one if you're into cascading. Burnished Heart. This is great for any deck because it's colorless. Now it does cost more mana because of that, because for 3 colorless we cast it, and then for another 3 colorless we have to sacrifice it, and then we get 2 basics onto our battlefield tapped. And what's nice is that they don't have to share a type, so this can be an island and a forest, but still it works in any deck, and for 21 cents this is a great buy. Fertilid. For 2 and a green, we have a 0/0 elemental which actually enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters, and then we can pay a 1 and a green to remove a +1/+1 counter, and then we can have target player search their library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. I really like this one because if you're doing a +1/+1 counter deck, you can constantly be paying 1 and a green or literally a rampant growth cost and getting a basic land onto your battlefield. So if you're into landfall and +1/+1 counters, this is a great one for you. Centaur Rootcaster. For 3 and a green, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may search your library for a basic land and put that onto the battlefield tapped. This is a really neat one, and it's a 2/2, so it's more likely we'll be able to swing at our opponents, and if they do block with a 1/1, they'll lose that creature. But again, we deal combat damage, we're getting basic lands. Next we're talking about Azorius Signet. For 2 mana, we can pay 1 and tap it to get a white and a blue, and for 71 cents, this is a really great price. Boros Signet. For 39 cents, we get red and a white this time. A little more expensive, we have the Golgari Signet. This time we're getting black and green for 92 cents. Gruul Signet is at a great price of 34 cents, and this time we're getting red and a green. Izzet Signet is a little bit pricier at 65 cents, we're getting blue and a red this time. Orzhov Signet is 47 cents, and we get a white and a black. Rakdos Signet is 76 cents, and this time we're getting black and a red. Simic Signet is surprisingly low in my opinion. For 31 cents, we get a green and a blue. For our colorless options, we have Prismatic Lens. For 28 cents, we can pay 2, tap it, and get a colorless mana. Or if we really need that colored mana, we can pay 1, tap it, and get any color of 1 mana. As for the talismans, there is 3 that were under $1. We have Talisman of Creativity. For 78 cents, we can pay 2 and tap it for a colorless, or we can tap it for red or a blue, and it deals 1 damage to us. Same thing with Simic. Next is Talisman of Curiosity. This time it's getting us a green or a blue, and it's 48 cents. Last of the talismans, we have Talisman of Resilience. This is going to give us black or green, and it's 30 cents, which is a really good deal. Jumping back into green, we have Font of Fertility. This is pretty much Wayfarer's Bauble, except it wants to be green, and it's 39 cents, another great budget option. Into the Wilds. This isn't necessarily going to get us a basic land every time, but I really like this neat card, because at the beginning of our upkeep, we can look at the top card of our library, and if it's a land card, we put it onto the battlefield. So this can help us get us that much closer to casting our creature spells, our instants, our sorceries, whatever we need. And it's 70 cents, so this might be one for you to consider. Animist Awakening. For X and a green, we have a sorcery where we can reveal the top X cards of our library. We can put all land cards from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest in the bottom of our library in a random order. And it also has Spell Mastery, so if there's 2 or more instants and sorceries in our graveyard, we get to untap those lands. This is super good, as long as we have the mana, of course. So for 75 cents, lands. I really like this one. So for example, let's say X is 4. We reveal the top 4 cards. Maybe there's 1 land in there, so we'd have to pay 5 mana for 1 land, and that would enter untapped if we have 2 or more instants and sorcery, so that would not be an ideal situation. So we're looking for as much mana as possible to be put into this so we don't miss those lands. But again, if we're a land focused deck or a landfall themed deck, it's more likely that we're going to hit more lands if we're paying 4 for the X or whatever amount of mana we're paying. Caravan Vigil. I love this one. Okay, listen, for 1 green we have a sorcery. We get to search our library for a basic land, put it into our hand, but it has Morbid as well. We can put that card onto the battlefield instead of putting it into our hand if a creature died this turn. So again, this is a perfect card in a deck like Marin, or a deck that wants our creatures to die. And look, for 16 cents, this is a steal of a deal. Edge of Autumn. For 1 and a green, if we control 4 or fewer lands, we're going to search our library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So this is really good in the beginning of the game, and later on, not so good, especially because if we want to cycle this, we have to sacrifice a land, discard the card, and then we're able to draw a card, which if we like our lands dying, this is actually a great card for it. But again, like I said, this is great in the early game. Clear the Land. Now, I haven't seen this until recently. For 2 and a green, we have a sorcery where each player reveals the top 5 cards of their library. They're going to put all the lands revealed this way onto the battlefield tapped and exile the rest. Hopefully, we're going to get the biggest benefit out of this when we're playing Landfall or any land-themed deck. And look, for 60 cents, this is a really neat one, especially for 3 mana. Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to purchase any of these cards, you can use the TCG link down below to help support the channel at no additional cost to you. Thank you to the patrons who help support this show, and you can also become a $10 patron to see your name at the end of these videos and get an exclusive Ultra Sleeve each month. Be sure to comment down below if you found any new budget ramp cards you'll be using, and subscribe for more Mango content. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.